All right, now we're going to be discussing two-tone sketching. And when I'm doing two-tone sketches, there's two sort of methods I like to use for approaching these. The first one is just taking one of these black and white sketches that we've already established, and we're just going to clip layers over them to create our two tones. So quick example here, the first layer is a lighten layer, and this just takes your blacks and turns it into this sort of burnt umber or dark brown color that we have. So that would be a lighten layer that we clip on. And then the next layer over the top of that would be our lighter color here, sort of like a light tan color. And we're going to turn a multiply layer on over the top of that. So it's pretty straightforward. You just want to make sure that your base sketch is on its own layer, and then we're going to apply a lighten layer over our blacks, and then a multiply layer over the whites to get our lighter tone. So this is pretty quick and easy. You can take almost any black and white sketch and quickly apply these tones over the top of it. So that's kind of my go-to method. There's also another method where you just sketch from the very beginning using your tones already set up. So instead of doing a black and white sketch, we just set up our color palette down here so that it already has our tones, and then use the dark tone as your black and the lighter tone as your white. So we can just quickly sketch something out like this, and you've already got your sketch set up to do whatever you need to after, and you don't have to worry about applying, multiply layers to things. You can just sketch straight up what you want out of it. And then you use the same method that we do for the black and white stuff, where you just use your hotkey to switch back and forth between the tones like this, and you just sketch in and out of things. So that's another method you can use to create these types of sketches. Some of the reasons you might want to do two tones instead of purely black and white is with some of these sketches, once you have a large sort of area of white here, you can start to lose some of the visual impact of the sketch itself. So like in this whole area, everything's white, so it doesn't stand out to the eye as much if you look at it from a zoomed out perspective. So you start to lose a little bit of your silhouette impact. So if you're using two tones, you can maintain the impact of the silhouette here, even though you have a large area of a light color. So that's one reason. Second reason would be with these two tones here, instead of just a pure white, it gives you another layer of information that you can add to your sketch without having to worry too much about your white sort of disappearing into the canvas behind it. So if you wanted to add like an extra layer of information, such as hair coming off of the boar here, you could still add that in without having it disappear into the background. Whereas if this was white and you were trying to use white as your lighter tone, if you did something like this, it just wouldn't show up on the canvas. It's more of a technical limitation. And then another reason I like having these two-tone sketches set up is it makes it a lot easier to jump from a sketch into a colored painting. So this small amount of color information allows us to more quickly jump into rendering and coloring things up. Whereas if it was purely black and white, you'd have a little bit more work for jumping in between black and white into like a painted image. And another benefit of using two tones is it allows you to keep adding additional tones on top of them while maintaining a nice sort of structured value layout here. So let's say, for example, we want to add, you know, some sort of tribal markings or tattoos to this character. Well, we can just simply take this lighter tone and then go up a little in value, and we can start adding markings to this character, and it gives us an additional layer of information here without sort of messing up our value structure that we've already put in. So you can just work in a nice pattern. You can try out a bunch of different things, but the overall sketch and structure is still there, so you're not going to mess that up at all. This also works well if you want to add, you know, additional costuming or design to the actual outfit the character is wearing. So you might want to add, let's say, like a shoulder pad or something to this character. We can add that in with a lighter tone. And then come back in with our dark value. Add a little drop shadow, like so. Another benefit we have of using this two-tone method is we can easily add a third tone without it interfering with our value structure at all, and use it to add a little bit of detail pop to give a little bit more interest to the eye here. So let's take this sort of hefty looking boar that we've created over here and think, what's something we can add that will give a little more interest to the eye? So we can create a couple of cool little details real quick and then add that on as maybe some sort of tattoo that gives a little bit of interest and story to the character we have, without having to completely redraw out any existing details we already established within the character. So it doesn't have to be too crazy. We're just gonna use symmetry here and create just a little bit of a pattern of some sort. Doesn't have to be, you know, anything groundbreaking. We just want to create something real quick to give us a base that we can work over the top of. And then we're going to use some thicker lines to kind of establish the main level of detail, kind of like in our fundamentals where we have a thick or a large shape, and then we're going to work down to some smaller and medium shapes as well. Yeah, something kind of like this. It's kind of busy, but a lot of this will get knocked out as we add it onto the actual creature. We won't see it anymore. So there we are. Let's turn symmetry back off. And now we can just take this and we're going to apply it as a sort of like a full arm tattoo here onto our creature. We're going to warp it into place quickly. You know, and again, this is more of just like a rough base that we'll sketch over in just a second, so it doesn't have to be perfect. We just want to kind of get it in the general shape of the shoulder and arm here. And then we'll erase out some of this, like in here. Don't need that. This is getting a A little too much down here. And then this we wouldn't see. So we can get rid of some of that. There we go. There's a little too much over here still. Get rid of some of this. Okay. So now we're gonna come back in with just our regular brush tool, and we're gonna kind of imagine that whatever this tattoo is gonna have some sort of tribal or religious meaning to it. So we're just gonna add some hints at symbolism for what this tattoo might mean to this character. Maybe it's a symbol of their god that they worship, or maybe it's like a family crest. Let's see. Now we want to try and think how we can tie in these tusks. Maybe this is the head of the god that they worship. It's got some big tusks or horns attached to it. You know, maybe it's some sort of dragon deity that has the head of a boar, or something like this. You know, doesn't have to be perfect, but we're just trying to come up with some interesting ideas here. And just get rid of some of this. It's getting a little too busy. And then we're gonna try and follow the anatomy down a little bit here, just to kind of try and tie everything together. And maybe this is like the head, and then it's gonna come down here like this, and then you'll have sort of like a tail that wraps around the forearm. There we go, something like that. With some extra patterns and details in here. And we're just adding a little bit of extra visual interest to the arm area. You know, maybe we got a little additional pattern coming down in here. But since we're getting farther from the focal point, we want to keep the details down here a little bit smaller, whereas up here the details are much larger. There we go. So that's another technique we can use to add sort of more visual interest, just taking this even lighter value and use that as a third tone to add on top of our two-tone sketch. And it kind of gives us a way to add information and detail to the sketch without actually, you know, breaking up what we've already created. Just adding a little bit more detail here. There we go. Kind of try and tie it all together. Maybe even have something that's coming around the leg. You know, maybe it's part of this large clan, and every time they get a little bit more experience in, say, like a raid, or, you know, killing one of their enemies, they get a little bit more of this tattoo added to their body. and it will kind of signify where they lie within the tribe. You know what status they have. There we go. Another reason I like using the two-tone method here is it allows me to do a little bit of kit bashing or sketch bashing, as you might say, where you're basically taking pieces of your sketch and just cutting it up, combining it with other pieces to create a completely new or slightly altered version of your sketch. Now you can do this with line drawing as well, but personally I find it's just a little bit easier to do when you're cutting shapes out instead of cutting lines out. It just makes it a little bit easier to connect things and use the tool to adjust everything. So here you can see I'm cutting out this head, and then we're gonna cut it up into a couple of pieces here. So we got that cut up. I'm gonna cut up the top portion here like this. And now we're gonna alter them slightly. So we're gonna have this tilt up a little, distort it slightly. Then we're gonna take the lower jaw, and we're just gonna rotate that down. Like so. Merge these back together. Now we're going to go in and fill in this jaw area. Like this. And now we can kind of go in and design the mouth out a little bit. So it gives us a chance to kind of come in and explore what the interior of the mouth is going to look like. Come in here, add a few things, you know, kind of we can do a whole bunch of these sort of smaller teeth, or we can try and really exaggerate the tusk portion. Yeah, like this. You know, a couple of different options we can do. But using the lasso tool and the sketch we've already established, we can come in here and play around with this as much as we want. And it doesn't take too much extra time. You don't have to like totally redraw anything or try and come up with anything from scratch. We just use what we've already created here, and you can come in and just mess around with it a little bit. You know, it's pretty quick and easy. You can even excuse me. You can change up the different types of teeth. You try doing some flat molars. See how that looks. Sometimes the flat teeth are, you know, have kind of a freaky look to them. They almost look human. So do something like that. But just a different way to approach the sketching method. Save you a little bit of time and let you explore your own sketches a little bit more. And then if you come up with a new head design or a new head shape that you like even better than the original one, you can always, you know, copy paste that back over your sketch and have a, you know, new look to the design you've already done. So just a time-saving thing, allows you to explore your ideas a little bit further without having to redraw everything out. We can also take parts of our other design that we already have over here, such as this shoulder pad, and we can cut that out and add it over here, and kind of play around with our costuming a little bit. You know, maybe instead of being this, you know, big shirtless guy, we could have a little bit of costuming and armor designed on top of him. Gives a little bit more of an intelligent feel to the design. You just add in a little bit of a collar here, so it almost feels like he's wearing a vest of some sort. Now we can start adding little detail bits on top of this. We can add, you know, maybe we have a bit of a connection point here. You know, maybe there's some trinkets or something tied to this. You can add a little bit of detailing at the top here where this collar comes around. We could add, repeat some of the spike design so it carries through, so that it feels like the shoulder pad and the collar are part of the same thing. It feels like one cohesive piece. So there's just another option that, you know, cutting pieces of other sketches out and adding them to different designs that I like using. You know, so now the character has a different feel to him. You know, he has a slightly more intelligent feel. He's got a bit of costuming to him, so it feels less like a beast and more like it's got like a intelligence or personality to him. Now we're just adding little tiny bits of detail on here, kind of enforce the shapes we already have.